Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-host,
Dominic Castillo.
Alright, and so we're back. Had a week break because of school complications, scheduling, and all that, you know. You know the gist of it at this point.
It do be like that sometimes. We are finally, for me specifically, in the terms of semester time, we are finally coming up on our final exams and final papers. I'm struggling a bit, Jack. I'll be honest with you. I'm still passing my classes, fortunately, but considering my position on taking my final exam, you know, I feel like I'm like walking on a thin line. You know what I'm saying? At the moment, things don't seem very good. I mean, I have not yet taken the exam, but I'm looking at like other exams from like previous years, and these exams kind of get, you know, they're a little more difficult than I thought they would be originally. Considering how I thought these classes would be easy, my econ class, like the percentage of how many students have passed it's not great. I mean, it's still possible, but you know, it's pretty difficult looking at the previous exams. My research paper is coming along kind of fine, but you know how they say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You know, I've written a lot. I threw in a lot of citations and stuff like that. I put a lot of mind into it, but it could all, you know, possibly miss the mark, if you know what I mean. But that's the situation with school at the moment, and it's not going too well. But yeah, how about you, Jack? How you been? How's school? How's life?
Yeah, I understand a lot of what you're feeling. It's that pre-final exam stress. Doesn't get any easier no matter how many times it arrives, you know.
Yeah, true.
But I'm in finals week as well. Starting this week is actually today is the start of finals week for me, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, same thing. Got those nerves, you know. I mean, I'm already technically done with one class already, for the most part, if I remember correctly. I'm currently having to write an 8-page paper for one of my other classes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other class is a final exam that you know, got to study for. It's the typical, you know, multiple choice questions and stuff like that. And there's just it's a lot of stress, you know, especially for someone who isn't like the best test taker, you know.
Right.
I've never been one for like those memorization type tests. You know, it's part of the reason why I've not really liked school a lot was that it's always been like that whole memorization type thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's not about whether you actually understand the material. It's just, hey, memorize all this stuff so you can do well on the exam, you know?
Right.
And, like, some people might argue that and say, like, you know, well, if you're memorizing the stuff, then don't you really get it? But, like, you know, it's easy to memorize the concepts without actually, like, knowing what you're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, for, like, example, like, I don't know, in, like, biology, you know, it's easy to memorize, you know, the names of all these things, but not really understand, what they do or how they work together, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's one of those, like, it's things like that, like, at least, like, early on, you know, it's, like, it's why I felt like, school wasn't for me in the sense that it wasn't, it didn't cater to my strengths, you know, which obviously, you know, it's because, you know, they're trying to make it accessible to everyone, you know, it's not obviously catering towards one person, you know.
Right.
But, like, it doesn't help, you know, the fact that, like, you know, there's students that have different strengths and weaknesses, that have different styles of learning, you know, and it's, like, it's difficult when it's not accommodating to any of those students, you know, in the sense of, like, you know, the system's not really helping anyone.
Right.
You know, and by that I mean, you know, it's like, you know, again, you're not working to the best of the students' strengths and weaknesses, and that's because again, they have all these students to take care of, so it's
Right.
harder. But it's like it's like you got to understand that not everyone is the same, and that's the issue with the school system, especially like the early stages of the school system. Like I mean, it's all like all the stages: elementary, middle school, high school.
Yeah.
Where despite like being able to maybe acknowledge that different students have different learning styles. I mean, some teachers, who are actually in it to make sure that the students learn and they do well and they actually care about the students, they'll do their best to help cater to those students, even if they have 100 students they have to teach to. They'll try their best to help accommodate for each student, But the system in general, it generalizes everything and standardizes everything, Where even though you may be this type of learner, you learn this way. It's like this is the way we're doing. As example through the standardized tests.
Yeah.
Where you gotta learn this and this and do it like this and this and not really showing attention to the actual students.
Yeah.
Because by this I mean it's like there's the classic well, some students are visual, some students are auditory learners, some are tactile learners.
Yeah.
There's no different styles. Obviously the basic ones of trying to figure out what are a student's best taught when seeing how it happens, hearing the instructions and being able to do it just off that, or seeing it done and being guided through it, like again tactilely, or
Yeah.
like that. But then it goes even deeper, which again why it makes it such a complicated process, because are some students good at taking like tests, are others not that good of test takers, or what, like the different strengths that they may have, they're good at problem solving, but their writing isn't the best, or they're really good at writing and explaining ideas, but when it comes to again, like in my case, good at writing and analyzing, but when it comes to memorization type stuff, and really, for me in general, it's like anything outside the realm of like English and history, because those two are like really like heavily based on writing and analysis, versus
Yeah.
like the math and sciences where it gets really complicated and involves a ton of like memorization. And so that's not to say English and history, no, especially history, they expect you to memorize a lot of the dates, but saying from a history like type teacher that I loved was in history it shouldn't like, obviously you should care about like the whens and the who's and stuff, but like the bigger emphasis should be on the why, like why did these things happen, what does it like, basically the deeper analysis of it, like why
Yeah.
why do these events matter, why do the dates of these events matter and stuff like that, rather than just again simply memorizing who, what, when, and that matter.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, honestly, following on your words, I myself am more of like a visual learner, but sometimes I could just never, recap all the information that I just learned in one go. And so what I mostly tend to do in like in situation where I feel like I'm lost and like in like situation like I have no idea what I'm doing, I just simply, I like for me, Google and like YouTube videos that are teaching the same topic, but like more said easier, like makes me understand it better than having it like said by a professor, who's meant to know about everything. But some, like let's say for calculus, some Indian guy teaching calculus is super easy, and I can capture the information very quickly. It's a very weird, how would you say it, thing among students, and having them being taught stuff is that most when it's said to them directly in person, sometimes the information, maybe not for everyone, but for me, like specifically, I cannot always capture the information. But if, like, let's say the same information is being taught on YouTube, like visualizations, explanations, the comment section also like supporting and like giving in their own thought processes. It's it stimulates me into like actually learning more and actually retaining the information more. But I don't feel like that's the proper way per se. As for the example, like Mr. Garabedian, our calculus teacher, I believe he mentioned like during one of his calculus courses that he received a whole lecture from a calculus professor. He didn't understand it, but instead referred back to a YouTube video that taught the same information, and yet he was able to, retain everything they learned. And so, everyone works differently, but I mostly work based off of like the YouTube videos that teach it like directly without giving like, straying off information. Like, I remember for me, in one of my calculus courses, my professor would always aside from teaching the actual course itself, he would always give a history lesson as to like how did let's say derivatives come across, and stuff like that. But yeah, I get what you're coming from, Jack. It especially when it comes to writing as well. My writing is really really bad. I'll be honest. I could write long essays, but for some reason, just being me, I can never. How would you say like? Combine it all together into like one nice short thesis or one small analyzation over a specific topic, and I just end up losing points because of it. And my citations get pretty bad as well. But yeah,
and
crazy stuff.
Again, going back to the calculus thing and maybe learning better through other means versus actual schooling. Again, it goes back to the whole standardization part of it. Where they're just teaching things in one uniform way. And like a lot of teachers, obviously some, they ask students for feedback at the end of the year because they want to, improve, much like, like, I don't know if your college has, but mine, they have these like evaluations that they want you to fill out at the end of each quarter to like rate your professors and TAs and give them like, criticisms and advice on how to improve or what you enjoyed versus what you didn't.
Yeah, we have those two.
Yeah, but then there's some teachers, both in the general schooling system of, elementary, middle school, high school, and even in the, the higher education, of like colleges and universities and stuff where, like in both systems, you have these professors and teachers who just stick to the same thing that, worked for them maybe like years ago, and they don't bother to change. They don't bother to try and, again, like fix. And again, see, it's another issue because it's like, well, what if a teacher has a certain way of teaching, and like that's just their way of teaching, it's the same thing as a student having a certain way of learning, But some, even if their way of teaching is proven that it isn't working, they still stick with it because, it's their way, or it's the way they always have taught it,
Yeah.
And so it's like, you just kind of look at things like that and it's like, because of how standardized it is and uniform it is, it's like you see that struggle with students where they're learning better in outside avenues than in an actual like classroom. And I think another thing that has to do with it too is that, when you're watching those YouTube videos, there's some cases where, like you and Mr. G stated that you sought out those videos because you didn't understand the actual teaching.
Yeah.
But I think also a big difference too is also that a lot of times when people go to watch those videos, it's usually on their own time and out of their own interest, And I think that's another thing that helps people learn better is when they're actually interested in the subject, Like the example I can give to you is that for some reason, even though I want to go into like more of like a history major type thing, I'm still required to like take all these science courses for requirement. And it's like I keep struggling in them because it's like, does it look like science is my interest? Does it look like I want to be taking these science courses, Yeah. And I'm forcing myself to push through it and try and do well. But it's like I have no interest in any of the stuff I'm learning. And that affects how someone learns,
Yeah.
No one's going to learn effectively if they have no interest in it, because then it just leads to the whole, again, memorization type thing where, I'm just memorizing and learning this information enough so that I can pass the test, but that's it. They're not retaining any of it. They're not actually learning about anything in the subject, And once they leave that class, they're like, okay, yeah, throw out all the information. I don't need any of it.
Yeah.
And it was even worse in, the early, like, years of school, and, like, high school and stuff like that, because it's like, you're supposed to carry that information on to the next years, but, people just were tossing out the information they learned because they weren't interested, and then it was like, oh, well, it's next year, you're in a class that's supposed to be a continuation off that, and you don't know how to do it, or you don't remember because, again, you were only memorizing to pass the class, passing for the grade, or, doing it for the grade,
Yeah.
And so, like, that becomes an issue because it's like, again, it's one, and it's in college, it's a waste of money because it's like, why are you making me waste my time and money with these classes that I had no interest in, Instead, why don't you just let me take the stuff that's, the stuff I want to take, the stuff that I'm building towards, if you already know your major,
Yeah.
Like, why am I forced to then spend my time just taking these classes that I have no interest in,
Yeah.
And there was one more thing I was going to say from what you were talking about, but it kind of slipped my mind. I can't remember what it was.
Was it perhaps the, what was I talking about? The essay proportion part?
Oh, yeah. There we go. So when you were talking about how, you struggle to make it cohesive and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I think, again, this is another flaw of, like, people teaching. Like, I get word limits, you don't want just a student to write 200 words on an assignment, and you don't also want them to write, 2,000 words on an assignment, Like, you want to set some type of uniformity so that, you aren't forcing these teachers and, and TAs and professors, whoever's grading the stuff, to read, 100 papers of 2,000 words each, or and stuff like that. But, like, it becomes an issue to me because it's like, it's something I struggle with, where, it's they complain that you aren't being precise, or you are over elaborating on certain things, and you're not condensing the information. But the only reason it's like that is because you're trying to reach that word limit,
Yeah, I get you.
Like, when you're stretching out words and sentences and topics, like, when you were already finished, like, at a certain point, but you're continuing to elaborate and stretch upon it because, you're trying to fit that word limit, or else it's not going to be, accepted and graded properly. Like, you're going to be docked points for it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you with that. I think what, like, grading must also account to is what limitations every student has, which might actually be bad now that I think about it. But, like, I understand, like, applying a certain standard playing field for all the students would be very good. But, like, to those who have disadvantages, not intense disadvantages, but disadvantages in terms of a person specifically struggling with making let's say conclusion, making a thesis or creating citations, but also adding the how would you say it? Adding into the grade and the reasoning as to why. Because of the students, how would you say, limits or hardship that they're currently going through, like financial hardships. Maybe they weren't able to complete do a perfect essay because they have a job to attend to every morning or every night, or they have to visit their parents because they're in the hospital. Unfortunately, but that's just me. I don't know. Oh, do you think grading should also include such hardships? Or
I think there should be more of an understanding,
Yeah.
And obviously you can't be too lenient, but if again, it's up to the student to make that connection with the teacher and stuff, and give them the proper notice. But then there's some instances where you can't give proper notice, if the power goes out during finals week, it's like you couldn't have planned for that, and like I've seen some people where like the professors aren't accommodating and stuff, and it's like, you know, it's like some people are like, oh, well, the library has free Wi-Fi, but not everyone can get access to it. And like, I get it, libraries are free to the public. That's not what I mean by access to it. I mean, like, for some of these kids, do they have someone to take them?
True.
And it's like, oh, like for me, there's a library like a couple blocks down. I forget what it's called, but then there's also the Los Feliz one all the way down. It's like if I ever needed internet, let's say during school, it's like I wouldn't have access to those libraries because this is like younger me, My dad was working all the time till like 5 or 6, and like by that point, the libraries, are getting ready to close by what, 7 or 8,
Yeah.
Sometimes, and what? You want a middle schooler like me to go walking all that way, by myself? Because no one else knows how to drive, and like, again, a lot of these kids nowadays, like, sadly, they don't have someone to drive them, and, sadly, because of the decisions other people want to make, sometimes they don't even have parents who give a damn about them, and so they're just trying to do everything on their own, and it's like, you'll see some of them, like, make these journeys to these places with free Wi-Fi just to do their assignments,
True.
And it's like, so it's like, it's tough to be accommodating there. And the other thing that you mentioned that I really want to get into is when you talked about the limitations of a student, I will never understand why people think that everyone is some type of super genius in a way,
Yeah.
where they can just learn anything and be good at anything, And the main part that this comes into play to is, of course, grades. Yes, you have to grade things, obviously, but I hate how much grades have just become, in a sense, everyone's general reflection of a person,
Yeah.
Because, though people are going to hear this and maybe think I sound stupid saying this, but you can get a good grade in a class and still not be good at that subject or even understand, because there's ways, essentially, like, it sounds terrible the way I'm worded, but there's ways to finesse the system,
True.
I have never been good at math, but yet I've always found a way to pass each and every one of my math classes with a passing grade,
Yeah.
And that's because, again, there's ways to finesse the system. When I say finesse, I'm not meaning that I just straight up cheated, Obviously not. But, like, there's ways to finesse it, and that the key thing that I did for a lot of my science and math classes was what I've been saying earlier. I just memorized the stuff enough to pass the class, and then once I was done, I just forgot all the information because it's not like I was any good at it,
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I'd spend the days leading up to an exam just memorizing, okay, here's the formula you got to do, here's where you plug this and this into. I'd take the exam, and then after that, it was like, okay, I got the good grade. That's about it,
Yeah.
And, like, people just don't understand that there's limitations. Going back to the thing of, like, why am I taking classes I have no interest in? A lot of times people don't have interest in those subjects because they're just not good at it and people don't understand it,
Yeah.
And another thing is, like, okay, and the thing, again, that people don't understand about limitations is that all the limitations can't simply be solved by just being taught it,
Right.
Like, the one reason I hated English Lit and English Lang, the AP courses so much, was that there was so many skills people were expected to know, and it was like, okay, what do you do if these kids don't know it? And, like, the teachers, again, it's no disrespect to the teachers, they tried their best, but the teachers, would kind of sit there and try and explain, these things, like, almost in a sense, let's say, for, you remember one of the essays where you're supposed to, like, pick it apart and come up with the different, I forget what the word was for it, but, it's like, pick out the different examples of, like, imagery, alliteration, stuff like that, and kind of tie it to, like, what it means,
Right.
But it's like, if you as a student don't have that skill to identify it, it's not like you can be taught that, because it's almost like you have to have this natural ability to catch these things, you know? Like, sure,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to identify alliteration and stuff, but like other things like certain types of diction or imagery and stuff like that, like, unless it's being blatantly obvious with its imagery, you know, you have to have that ability to be able to read and catch those things, you know? And
Yeah.
not every student has that, and at that point there's not much you can do, because it's not like you can teach them how to do it, you know? Like, both the teachers I had tried in a sense to teach me how to, and I was just like, and like, it was frustrating because no one was understanding that this isn't a skill that you can teach me, you know? This is just something that essentially someone has to have already had, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's an ability to be able to read something and be able to pick it out, you know? Like, you know, oh, you know, like, like going back to the diction thing, you know, being able to read and being able to pick out certain words that identify what type of tone the person has, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
you can't really teach someone that, because again, every essay, every reading is going to be different, and it's not going to be the same. So you have to have that natural ability to be able to identify it, you know? And that's something that frustrated me, that people weren't understanding, was, hey, I don't have this skill, which is making this class difficult, and it's not helping that you think you can just simply teach it to me, you know? This isn't something that can simply be taught, you know? Now, with a lot of effort, maybe it can, and with a lot of, you know, trial and error, maybe it can, you know, but for the most part, especially in my case, it was never like that, you know? It was just, you know, again, having to finesse the system in the way that, like, I just had to try my best and essentially BS my way through it, you know? Like, I just had to read, and I know you felt this way, where it was just, you just had to read and take whatever you could from it and just start writing whatever in hopes that it was enough, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, that's the thing, is that people don't understand that not everyone, you know, can learn every single skill. And going back to the grades thing, you know, like, the grade shouldn't be a reflection of the skill, because, you know, I'm sorry to say this and pop the bubble that certain people have, you know, this idea of and stuff, but good grades don't reflect the skills of a student, you know?
Right.
There have been so many, like, students that we've seen that, yes, the grades were a reflection of their skill because they were really good at the subject. But then there was also other students who, you know, the teachers would praise and say they were really good and really hard workers, but the grades weren't reflecting it because, you know, maybe, again, they weren't the best test taker. Whatever was being taught to them, you know, though they were learning it, when having to apply it, maybe the cases where they had to apply it weren't the best way to showcase their abilities and skills, you know?
Right.
You know, and it's like, and just because someone has good grades doesn't mean, you know, again, this is going to sound like such a stupid saying, but I feel like you'll understand me when I say this. Just because you have good grades doesn't automatically make you some smart, excellent student, you know?
Yeah, true, completely.
Because, like, for me, you know, my whole life, I had these expectations upon me, set upon me by a variety of different people that, honestly, I wish I never had, you know? And it was all because, oh, well, look, he gets all the good grades, you know? And it's like, okay, but like I was just telling you, a lot of times I got those good grades by finessing the system, you know? And again, just to emphasize, that doesn't mean I was cheating or anything. But again, there's different ways other than cheating to help yourself get good grades, you know?
Yeah.
And like, here's a good one I can give you. And it's not really finessing the system, because if the teacher's the one providing it, you know, it's not finessing the system. But, you know, Miss Hill, she was our science teacher in high school. Every so often, before a big test, she would give us a study guide. Filling out that study guide and studying it over and over right before the test, you know, it improved your odds of doing better. does that mean you understood the stuff you were reading? Because no, a lot of times it was like you'd remember what was on it and just rewrite it, you know?
True. Especially when the questions are the exact same on the study guide, sometimes.
Yeah, there was some cases like that, you know? So it's like, you know, that's not the same as someone studying different biology and understanding the terms, how to apply them, how to connect them, you know?
True.
There's cases like that where it's like you're able to do good because, you know, the teachers are doing their best, you know, not giving it away, but they're helping you to, like, at least be ready for the test, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you're able to memorize that study guide and remember the stuff on it, and so that you're able to do well, you know? It's like not every exam is going to be the best showcase of a student's ability. Some exams, you know, again, going back to the science example, was just, oh, can you match the name of this bone to where it's at, you know? Like, can you match the fibula to where its location at in the skeleton, in the skeletal system, you know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Does that mean you are in like you passed that test and, you know, and so your grade's an A? Does that mean you're some automatic genius at anatomy? I was like, no, you just were able to match things, you know?
Yeah.
But so it's like, you know, people just solely looked at grades as the reflection, and it was like, you know, it's like it set unrealistic expectations upon students, you know?
Yeah.
That, you know, and it's like, in my case, it was like I just had to try my hardest, you know, to live up to expectations that shouldn't have been put upon me, you know?
Yeah, I got you.
Like, just because I was getting A's in math, people expected me to be this great math student, when it was like, if you actually watched me do math, you realized how much I struggled at it, you know? And that, again, you know, though I get nerves and stuff, and there are times where I'll bomb exams, you know, for the most part, it's just that I'm a really good test taker, in the sense that I know, again, I keep hating having to like phrase it like this and repeat this, right? But I know how to finesse the system, in that, you know, I know for the most part, you know, based off of study guides and stuff, what the exam's gonna look like, and I know how to properly prepare myself for it, even if I don't understand or, you know the material, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for a math exam, what you basically just need to know is, hey, memorize the formula. Like, that was all of calculus, was memorize the formula and just be ready to apply it, you know, even if you aren't fully understanding the why of it, you know, going back to the history thing, understanding why are you doing this and what does it mean, you know?
Yeah.
You just know, plug in numbers to this spot and this spot, and that's really it. You know, and like, so, you know, the main point I'm trying to get is, you know, is like, grades shouldn't be a reflection, or not that they shouldn't be the whole story, you know? And you shouldn't use grades to solely judge a student and create this perception of them, you know? Because for me, and I know you can relate to this because of the later years of high school, you know, you get good grades and automatically people think you're some super genius, you know, and all that, you know, or that, you know, oh, I know you definitely are going to relate to this. Because you get the good grades, everyone thinks they can rely upon you to either help teach them, tutor them, you know, or help them out with stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they look at you, and it's not a bad thing, but they look at you as reliable, and in, like, some cases, it's like, why are you creating these perceptions of me, you know?
True. Yeah. I could definitely relate to that. I think it didn't piss me off, but it just kind of got annoying when people started asking help for homework and stuff like that, expecting me to do all the work for them. Even worse, when it was just like homework help, and it was simple too. Like, they could have just done it themselves, but they just didn't want to do the work. But yeah. It at some point it kind of got annoying. But you know, it is what it is. And honestly, even though I did even though I did get high grades back in high school, honestly, it felt like I didn't even deserve them. Only because sometimes the content was just really easy, or it was just super easy to memorize. And seeing those high grades, other people instantly thought that I'm a genius because of it. And honestly, I'm not. You know, right now looking at college stuff, like I'm definitely not I'm definitely not what people thought I was back in high school per se. In terms of like uh, school status, in terms of intelligence per se.
Yeah, and that goes back to, you know, people might think this is mean, but like the counselors were really honest, you know, in that sense of all right, so okay, I just remembered, I was kind of forgetting what I was gonna say, but so two things. Yes, so your point of, these people were looking at us as geniuses when the matter of the fact was we were just putting in the effort, if you get what I
Exactly.
mean. Like, as you mentioned, a lot of the work was kind of easy, and it wasn't even in the sense that sometimes we were smart in the subject, it was just like, if you actually sat down and took the time to look at what the assignment was asking for, it was like easy, it was easy
Yeah.
work, and you just needed to put a little bit of effort in,
Yeah.
And another thing, going back to what you were saying, I just remembered of, when you were saying that, compared to like how people viewed you in high school versus like how you're performing in college, I can feel the same way because the counselors prepped us for this. This is what I was saying, earlier, and I just remembered it because I lost my train of thought. But people might say they were might a bit harsh with saying this, but it was giving us the cold hard truth, and that was, hey, and I think it's the reason why you and I were more humble about our grading, and why, in a sense, when it came to applying to colleges, we were more, you know, we were more cautious. We were more, essentially ready for rejection,
Right.
Whereas a lot of people allowed themselves to get overconfident, and all rights to them, if you're performing and being, if you're one of the top students, of our class, go right ahead and, aim for the skies, that's not what I'm saying, but, the one thing that they prepped us for that I think you and I, feel more than anyone, especially because I think, I don't know how many people from our class are left in school, and that's none of our business, that's their life and their decisions. But
Right.
the one thing the counselors told us was, you're a big fish in a small pond. Once you go to college, be prepared to be a small fish in a big pond,
Right.
because guess what? Everyone who's getting accepted to that college is more than likely just like you at their schools. Top of the class, doing good grades, and the one thing that's setting you apart is whatever story you're telling in your college essays, to try and convince them to take you in, you know, or if you have outstanding test scores, from the standardized tests.
Yeah.
And don't forget, there's also international students coming from all around the world, who have even greater stories of how they're trying to come to the U.S., for a different life, So guess
True.
what? You may be looked at as the cream of the crop here, but when you get to college, for the most part, you ain't gonna be, what, because everyone else is gonna be like you, and it's true, it's a much different playing field,
Yeah.
Like my first semester, I got a B, I got two B's and a C, and people were surprised by that, but me, I was like, hey, I'll take it, it's not me being complacent, but it's me knowing that I tried my hardest that first semester, and that's what I got, This is college. It's not going to be all A's and 4.0 GPAs, It's not going to be all A's and B's even,
True.
I'm putting in my hardest work, and guess what? If I fail a class, that's on me, but at the same time, it's also not if I put in my full effort, and that's still what ends up happening,
Yeah.
It's something that I explained to you a lot too, is that, guess what? If you're trying your hardest, and all you get is a C, and again, some people are going to look at that and be like, oh, how can you say you were trying your hardest if you got a C, or if you even failed the class? And guess what? that just goes to show the difficulty of the situation. Again, that just goes to show that not everyone is good in every subject, and a lot of the times we're just being forced to take stuff that we're not good at, or take classes that aren't necessarily our strength, you know?
Yeah.
The goal should not be to make everything your strength. It should be to maximize your strength while minimizing and even hiding your weaknesses, you know?
Ooh.
If everybody is good at everything or good at the same things, you know, then what makes you stand out, you know?
Yeah.
Versus if they're helping to maximize your strengths and at the same time minimize your weaknesses and hide some of your weaknesses, then guess what? That's the best thing, because they're utilizing you to your best abilities. You know, they're not forcing you to try and conform yourself to a certain skill or, you know, type of archetype, you know. You're not trying to fit the square into the circle hole, you know.
Right.
I feel like people bring this up a lot to the point where some people might consider it corny, but like, you know, the quote from Albert Einstein is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And that's essentially the school system. Again, it's not that I'm against standardizing and, you know, I forget the word I used earlier, but, you know, uniformity and stuff, you know. But in the end, it's only hurting the students, you know. And it's especially hurting their confidence and the way they look at themselves, because, you know, we only got about like 3 minutes left, so we're gonna have to wrap this up. But real quickly, I don't know if you felt this way, but like, don't you just feel like that perception of constantly being that A student, that good student, you know, that high-performing student, just negatively affected you more than people thought it was helping?
Honestly, yeah. You know, the amount of, like, how would you say it, impressions that were left on me just because of my grades, even though regardless of the fact that most of the things were easy, I feel like it's negatively impacted me in terms of how people perceive, you know, them as me, in terms of just being someone who could do the homework instead of, like, you know, an actual human being per se.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
You know, I went through a lot of my schooling years, you know, absolutely hating myself, and I really shouldn't have been hating myself. I should have, you know, directed that anger towards the people themselves, because it just felt like I was a completely different person, you know. Essentially, I was putting up a facade, you know, where, oh, look at him, he's such a great student, he gets all these great grades, you know, when in reality, that's not the person who I am or want to be, you know. And that's not to say I don't want to strive for good grades, you know. But like behind the scenes, and I know you can relate to this because you and I are almost one and the same. It's like behind the scenes, I'm a huge procrastinator. I'm a huge guy who, you know, sadly, if I'm not invested or interested in the subject, I'm going to struggle. But yet, you know, the only thing that's driving me is just, you know, sadly, this it's not even dedication to learning. It's not dedication to learning, to wanting to get good grades. What kept me going all those years of school was sadly the determination to keep up this facade and perception that people created of me. Because I thought in the end it was going to make me think that I failed them, or that, you know, that they were going to think any less of me. Because again, like you said, it in the end just seemed like people only looked at you as the grades and the student rather than the actual human being you were, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like, again, going back to last week, you know, the mental health discussion thing, it's like people only looked at, nobody cared about the person you were, or at least that's what it felt like, you know. All they cared about was your usability and your usefulness to them, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, 10 seconds left, so just close out real quickly. I've been your host, Jack. This has been your fellow co-host,
Dominic Castillo.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you all next week.